everyone, and welcome to the My Ray of Sunshine podcast. My name is Mayra, and I'm here to help you receive the advice you deserve. Now, if you all are here, it's probably because you want to know exactly what those 6 types of introversion even means, and who better to ask than to ask Joanna, who is here with me today. So welcome, Joanna.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
I am so happy you're here, and I just feel like we'll have so many things to take away from this episode alone, and we're just getting started. So please, Joanna, tell us who you are and what your podcast and business are all about.
As you say, so I'm Joanna, but most people know me as Jo. But the reason we stick with Joanna quite a lot is it's really hard to say Joanna Rawbone, whereas Jo Rawbone's easier. So I'm Jo, and I have been a coach, trainer, facilitator since 1987. Such a long time.
Wow.
But the reason I'm proud to say that is because I love what I do. I feel like I'm lucky enough to get paid for my passion. So if we think of that Japanese concept of ikigai, I'm right there in the center working at my purpose.
Wow.
So my coaching and training business, as I say, has been running since on my own since 94. So I've been through some ups and some downs. It's been really kind of tough, and now is no different. But it was about 2 years ago that I finally got mad enough, I think, to say it's not right that introverts are excluded, are treated differently, because the extroversion bias is all around us in society, in education, in business. And I thought, you know what, it's time for me to do something, because if I don't do it now, when will I do it? And if not me, who? So I'm the voice of the quiet introvert.
Oh, wow. And what inspired you to be the voice of the quiet introvert, the voice of someone who just prefers to stay in their shell? Like, how did that motivate you to do what you're doing now?
I received some criticism very early on in my career, actually, that because you can see I'm not shy, right? And there are so many myths and misconceptions about what introversion is.
Mm-hmm.
And I was told that I was a low responder who lacked confidence. Now, neither of those things is true. And people assume that introverts are naturally, shy, or they have social anxiety, or they're depressed. I was called arrogant, stuck up, all sorts of things, just based on real misunderstandings. So I started the business Flourishing Introverts. I started the podcast, the Flourishing Introvert Talks, dispelling the myth that introverts don't have anything to say for themselves, to really start to break some of those myths so that we understand introversion better, we are more tolerant of introverts in our lives, and the introverts can stop pretending and start having better mental health and well-being.
Wow, that is incredible. And I'm so happy that you are the voice of it all. And you're the one that kind of lets people know exactly what it means to be an introvert, and how that doesn't mean that you're depressed, that you're not outgoing. Like, you can still be successful despite all the myths that come along with it. So I'm glad that that's what drove you to drive your own business and to have your own podcast, to kind of keep sharing that voice, and it's just amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, as I say, I reached that point where I thought, if I don't do something now, I might have left it too late, because I'm getting on in years, so I need to do something soon.
Right.
But also I felt every introvert deserves a me. Now, I know I'm not the only one doing this kind of work, and it needs a lot of us to be doing this work, because with up to 47% of people in the UK identifying as introverts, and over 50% in the US, that's a lot of people who are not able to be themselves, who are not valued for being themselves.
Yeah, that you're exactly right. And it's just crazy to me that not many people are willing to speak up and don't even know their own capabilities. And
Yeah.
how did you feel like speaking in front of so many people for your TED Talk that I listened to earlier, which I found phenomenal? And I just think that, you know, it was very moving and inspirational. And I was even reading the comments, everyone was agreeing with you. Like, how did it feel to be that person to kind of inspire and kind of motivate others to take action?
Do you know what? I mean, because of the work I do, I've emceed events of over 1,000 people. I've spoken on stage in, over 500 people at a time. I was more nervous doing that TEDx talk than anything else I've ever done,
Wow.
because what I was talking about was so personal to me.
Mm-hmm.
And if you listen really carefully, you'll hear a point where you hear my voice crack. And I was right on the edge of getting really emotional, actually.
Oh,
And
I didn't
so
get
I,
that.
yeah, I can still pick up exactly where it is, but then I remember feeling it at the time as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it felt an absolute honor to do it, because it's quite a selection process to go through to get selected for a TEDx speaker. So I
Right.
felt honored. Yeah, I felt honored to do it, but I also wanted to make sure that I did such a great job that introverts would finally go, oh, that's me. And people who live with, love, work with introverts would go, oh, I get it now. So it felt quite a responsibility, but a responsibility I was happy to take on.
Wow, that's amazing. That is so incredible that you were able to do that, especially giving other people in the workforce a point of view of maybe a colleague that they're working with, someone that they manage. And you know, like sometimes they're not going to be as outspoken and they're not going to be as involved, but that doesn't mean that they're not interested. And that doesn't mean that they're not really engaged. Like they could be all those things, but they just might not be as outspoken, because I was the exact same way in class. I did not want to stand out at all. I didn't want to really, you
Yeah,
know, raise my hand, ask questions. I would just be the person that waited till the class was over to kind of get up and ask the teacher, because I was interested, but I just didn't want everyone to like turn around. So
yeah.
it's great to have that perception and see things from a different point of view. And that way it just comes into an understanding of what being an introvert and dealing with someone who is an introvert really is and really means.
Yeah, and I go back to the original Jungian definition, and Carl Jung, the Swiss psychologist, said that the difference between introversion and extroversion is what drains and what charges our mental batteries. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about mental energy, and behavior is something over and above that. So you can never tell an introvert necessarily just by their behavior, but there are one or two giveaway clues. So introverts typically, when they've been exposed to a busy, overwhelming environment for too long, will just disappear. They
Mm-hmm.
won't they won't say their goodbyes. They won't say I'm off now. They'll just be gone. So all of
Mm-hmm.
a sudden they disappear.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because they felt their mental battery draining and know that they have to go and recharge. And, because what drains an introvert's battery is what charges an extrovert's battery. So extroverts need social um, interaction,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of busy, noisy, lively environments change in order to be stimulated. Our brains are already overstimulated. We don't need any of that. So
Yes.
it's the recharging that really matters, and
Mm-hmm.
the behavior, we can all flex our behavior to some degree, but it'll come at a cost. So I can put on my extrovert coat and I can go and MC an event,
Mm-hmm.
but I need to make sure I'm fully recharged beforehand and give myself time to recharge again afterwards. I
Mm-hmm.
can't do that day after day or night after night. I have to make sure that I've got downtime to recharge.
Right. Because that's how important it is to be in tune with ourselves, how we're feeling, because if we
Absolutely.
overdo it, we'll just run out of battery and we won't have that energy to kind of get back going. And I like that you mentioned that in your TED Talk as well, because you mentioned how like sometimes if you're on the go, you're always trying to please everyone, you're trying to be as extroverted as possible, like suddenly there's not so much energy for yourself, and then you
Yeah.
kind of feel like, what am I doing? Like, you kind of in a sense feel like fake, and you're like, what energy am I putting off? Like, that's not me. I need to feel like myself again.
Yeah.
Because it happens often. Yeah.
And that's the work I really want to do with introverts, to help them appreciate their true strengths so that they can play to those strengths authentically and stop pretending to be more extroverted. Most managers will give feedback to their staff that say, you need to speak up more, you need to push yourself forward, to you need. And everything they're saying we need to do is be more extroverted.
Mm-hmm.
Why can't we be our introverted selves, but play to those brilliant strengths? Do you know how many world leaders are introverts? There are lots of big leaders of corporates, of countries, who are all introverted, and yet we tend to think of it's only the extroverts because they're the ones that make a big noise about everything. The
Mm-hmm.
introverts quietly get on with doing their stuff. And it's great to have so many introverted leaders as role models. We need to make more of them. We need to highlight them more often.
Yes, that is so true. And it's just all about understanding like the root cause of it, and seeing what you can do to help, and not just give the feedback of speak up more, ask more questions, but instead just try to see if like a one-on-one meeting would be better versus a team setting.
Absolutely.
It's all about that change in atmosphere that can really make the impact that you want to see in a workplace.
Absolutely. One of the fundamental differences is that because of our mental battery, and the fact that introverts tend to be in their head more often, we have
Mm-hmm.
different communication processes. So an introvert's communication process is typically think, say, think. So when you ask me a question, and this is why I got the feedback that I was a low responder, because when you ask me a question, typically what I want to do is think it through and then
Mm-hmm.
give you my true answer.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. Yeah, I want to think it through and then give you my true answer.
Mm-hmm.
Extroverts' communication process is say, think, say. So you ask them a question and they'll come out with an answer really fast,
Mm-hmm.
but then they'll kind of go, and might change it afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason that we don't get heard is not that we don't have anything to say, but often there's not space in the conversation. Nobody leaves the gap for us to do our
Mm-hmm.
thinking bit and get to the say part of our process.
Yes. I can't tell you how many times in a conversation I thought about, oh, this story would be, fit the conversation pretty well. I can share this. And like, I'll just like be in my head thinking about how I'll introduce that topic. And then before I know it, the topic gets changed. And then it's like, well, whatever, I'm not going to bring it up again.
Yeah,
Because I was too
yeah.
busy thinking about it. And sometimes the overthinking gets to you a lot.
And one of the problems is that introverts can overthink. And so we
Mm-hmm.
need to learn how not to overthink, but think enough, but not kind of to the point where we take ourselves down a little spiral.
Yes, that's a thing that I have to work on as well.
Yeah.
And now, what advice can you provide for others wanting to understand the 6 types of introversion? Because I didn't even know there were 6 types until I listened to your episode, and I was like fascinated by how many I related to.
Yeah. So there are 6 pure types, one of which is the classic introvert. And the classic introvert is the one that we probably would think of as our stereotypical introvert. So they really are the ones who are head down, not saying too much, listening more than they're speaking, very resourceful, very independent, and probably, as I say, everything we would imagine an introvert to be. The other 5 types all have access to a range of extroverted behaviours that they can call on without feeling that battery drain. So, for instance, a connected introvert is somebody who has a wider circle of friends than a classic introvert. So whereas a classic introvert would have maybe, 3 or 4 really close friends, a connected introvert is going to have a much wider circle, and probably people that they'd refer to as that we'd refer to as acquaintances, they will still put them in the friends category. So they treat them quite differently. We've then got a dynamic introvert, and a dynamic introvert is somebody who likes to learn more by doing than perhaps a classic. So a classic is much better learning, watching what other people are doing, a bit of reflection, a bit of theory, some planning, and then give it a go. They're unlikely to jump in. Whereas the dynamic introvert is actually quite happy to jump in and give things a go. So, they're quite different on that respect. The next type is an engaging introvert. And an engaging introvert is one who brilliant on a stage. So they will have the audience eating out of the palm of their hand. They have a very kind of captivating aura about them. They have a great presence. So you can really see how they do kind of engage and have people. But again, once their work on stage is done, that's it. They'd prefer to then go and recharge on their own, because all of these types still have the same recharging needs, even though they can be extroverted. The open introvert, which is the type I am, is more likely to share thoughts and feelings. So if you ask me how I am, I'm likely to tell you, so you better really want to know. So I'll share thoughts, I'll share feelings, I'll be kind of quite open with you, which is really quite good. And then the sociable introvert is the one who's really quite a good mixer. So most introverts I know don't like networking events. Sociable introvert is pretty good at networking. They're a good introducer. They'll be really good at doing a bit of small talk. So a lot of things that have introverts go, oh, I don't want to do that, a sociable introvert will do. So of those 6 pure types, the classic is always going to be just a classic, but the other 5, you could either be one of those 5 types or a combination. So you could, there are a multitude. I've worked with people who are a connected, dynamic, engaging, open introvert. The only thing they're missing is sociable. So that's why there is, no 2 introverts are the same. We're all really different.
Wow. That's amazing that there's so many different types, and at the same time, they all kind of need that recharging at the end of the day to just kind of reset and then, go on their ways, whatever they really do. So it's great to see that aspect, and how, like, even though there are so many different types, they still have that one unique component that kind of brings it all together. And I also found it fascinating that you could have a mixture of introversion types, because I thought it was just one, but if you can relate to multiple, that's amazing.
It is, and it's what led people, I suppose, a few years ago to really jump on the bandwagon of saying, oh, I'm an ambivert, I'm a bit of both. Now, ambivert is a thing, but there are very few true ambiverts, because a true ambivert is someone who is equally charged by being with people and recharged by being quiet and on their own. So there are a few, but most will fall one side or the other. But people think they're an ambivert when I'm an introvert at heart, but I can socialize, or I can stand on a stage and deliver a presentation. No, you're just an introvert and probably an engaging or a sociable introvert. So
Right.
that's not an ambivert at all. Ambivert is a kind of a bit of a lazy way of saying I'm a bit of everything, but none of us is kind of, exactly pure one or one thing or another, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I remember when I listened to your episode, I was also thinking to myself, which one sounds more like me? And I remember after taking the quiz, I found that I was like, I believe the engaging one and the sociable one. And I didn't even know that was possible to have like multiple, but it was really interesting to see like how like I can still be considered an introvert, but then, at the same time be outgoing and like be extroverted in certain situations.
Absolutely. And you get an introvert on a topic that they're passionate about with a small group of people, and they will talk more than anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
But it's about having meaningful conversation. So most introverts aren't great at the small talk. The sociable one is, but most of us aren't. But get us on a topic we're passionate about, and we'll talk. We'll really talk.
Of course. I mean, it takes a really welcoming group, at least for me, to actually open up, because I feel like I can be more reserved to myself if I don't feel like the conversation is mutual, if I feel like that person is holding back, then I'll hold back as well.
Yeah.
But that's when that's how I kind of distinguish how I feel, because in other situations I enjoy, carrying on the conversation, and if they are the same way, then we'll get along great. But if I'm the only one making conversation, then it's just not going to work, because then I'll
No,
get drained.
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And you said that you are the open introvert, the openness
Yes.
one. So how does that really affect your communication skills, or just your life in general? Like how can you relate to that one?
So I think I use that a lot in the work I do as a coach, a trainer, and a facilitator, because I not only am I in touch with my own feelings, but I'm able to express them, and therefore I'm also able to hold the space for other people to explore their own feelings, their own emotions. And I think it would be quite hard for me to do the work I do if I didn't have that element of openness. And it also means that I I work with people to explore and develop ideas, because
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty good at sharing my thinking, and
Mm-hmm.
because it's only a thought, I'm not really yet attached to it. So it's not as though this is the way it is. I'm the phrase I use is that I hold it lightly. So one of my things I say is I'm really curious about. So I've had this thought and I'm curious about what this might mean.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think, comes from my willing to be, or my preference to be, open.
Wow. Wow. And I'm sure it helps you a lot, especially coach others, because that's like the perfect one to have, really, because you want people to relate to your feelings. You want to hear what other people are going through, so then you can help them even more. And in a way,
Yeah.
it's all about creating that connection, creating that level of openness where it just becomes a safe environment where people can share exactly what's going on in their lives.
Yeah, I think so. And I haven't done any real analysis, but I suspect that there's a correlation between the degree of openness and emotional intelligence as well. And I think that would be a fascinating area to explore.
Yes, I agree. That would be really great to be able to figure out. And what would you say would be some common misconceptions that people have once someone is labeled as an introvert?
And that's a great question, because I think often in the workplace, they are labeled as maybe not being ambitious because they don't push themselves to the front all the time and they don't always speak up. The assumption that goes with that is that they're not ambitious, they're not career minded, they're not really willing to do what it takes. But I think one of the things we need to shift in business is this kind of expectation that the leader is the loud one. The leader is always kind of driving forward, because people who lead from within as opposed to lead from the front is very empowering, actually. So
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to stop that myth or misconception that introverts aren't ambitious. Definitely stop the misconception or bust the myth that introverts are arrogant or disinterested or don't like people. You know, I'm a member of a few introvert groups, and almost daily there are posts in there about "I hate people." That's not about
Wow.
introversion.
Mm-hmm.
That's something altogether different. And you know, introverts don't hate people, but we're not necessarily, or sometimes we can be a bit awkward around people. As you say, if I start a conversation and no one gets going, then it's going to get a bit dry. So we don't hate people, but what we need is the right kind of people around us.
Yes. I can't agree
So
with you more.
so that's definitely a myth that needs busting. And I think also that there is something, you know, something fundamentally wrong with an introvert, because the strength of the extroversion bias means that even in education, even in schools, you know, we think there's something wrong with the child who likes to read quietly in the corner during their break time rather than go running around madly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so we need to stop thinking there's something wrong and just recognize it as neurodiversity. That's all it is.
Mm-hmm.
And for organizations who are committed to a diversity, equity, and inclusion agenda, they need to include neurodiversity. If they're not, then they haven't got a robust policy.
Wow, that's very interesting. And it just puts so many things into a different perspective, because I mean, you're people are always too quick to judge, especially like
Yeah,
a child who just wants to keep to themselves, who may not have many friends surrounding them, who may not even want that socialization. And it's completely normal, because everyone has their own personalities. Everyone just wants to do their own thing. And I remember even you saying that you just preferred reading a book, and you just rather do that before bedtime rather than
absolutely.
play outside, you know?
Absolutely right. And you know, there isn't anything wrong with that child. What we need to respect is that child is doing what they're doing to make sure they have a good, fully charged mental battery, which is good for their health and well-being. Why do we want to force children to do something that is damaging to their health and well-being? I don't
Mhm.
understand that. I really don't.
Yes, exactly. It's just all about that understanding of what
Yeah,
exactly they're going through, and just allowing them to be who they are. And introverted or extroverted, neither of them outweighs the other. So
no,
it's just all a matter of the way people think how children should be, or teens should be, or just about anyone, especially in the
yeah,
workplace. And I never thought of neurodiversity, being included in one of the policies, but that would be great, and something that companies need to reinforce. That way they really get a full understanding of their employees. If they want to care about them so much,
yeah,
they have to understand that specific term in general.
absolutely, absolutely, yeah.
And what tools or resources have you provided that helped others flourish in their introversion?
Well, I think the first thing is, if you think you're an introvert, or if you know people who are, encourage them or do the quiz, take the quiz. And it's very simply at www.yourintroverttype.co.uk. And what that will do is show you which of those 6 types of introvert or combination is you.
Mhm.
Once you know that, you can then start identifying your unique strengths so that you can start playing to those strengths better. So I think the first thing is to really understand, who am I as an introvert?
Mhm.
And then it's about really, once you've identified those strengths, making sure that you're creating opportunities to play to those strengths. So I talk about, I'm not a big fan of stepping outside a comfort zone. I like to work at the edge of my comfort zone all the time, so that I'm pushing at it and expanding it. Because eventually what happens, of course, is the comfort zone just becomes larger and larger. But I haven't had to do the whole get outside your comfort zone, because again, that's a very extrovert thing to be encouraged to do. So work at the edge. And you know, some of the work I'm doing with individuals is really helping people achieve that. I've got a program that's starting very soon called Frustrated to Flourishing, and it's for those people who realize that maybe they've been hiding a bit inside, because some people hide inside their introversion. You'll hear them say, I can't do that, I'm an introvert. That's a nonsense. We can do whatever we put our minds to. We just need to understand, where does my mental battery charge need to be before I do these things? So the Frustrated to Flourishing program really helps people to think about how they want their life to be. And then what we do is we set a path, we create a plan for them to get there by utilizing their strengths, by being authentic, by understanding their inner critic and their inner advocate, and getting those two working in harmony, so that the inner critic isn't knocking you back and the inner advocate is kind of really encouraging you forward. It's a beautiful program, really is.
Wow, that's so great that you are able to offer that and offer all those tools and programs for people who really just want to, I was going to say step outside of their comfort zone, but but just
Expand.
expand. And that's funny that you mentioned that too, because I always tell people, like, especially someone asked me yesterday, like, what do you do to when you're like feeling uncomfortable? Like, how do you overcome that? And I'm just like, well, you just have to challenge yourself to step outside of your comfort zone. But that can be really scary to a lot of people, to imagine themselves in an unfamiliar setting, not knowing the outcome, and having your perspective on that, and how you say it's just good to, like, you know, kind of step on the edge a little bit, just like kind of inch your way out and get yourself out of your shell with your own time and with your own ability, because it's all about like wanting to do that where you will actually succeed and you know, actually push yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right, it's about ability, and it is about stretching yourself, but it's about doing it authentically. For me, authenticity is so important. You know, the time for pretending is over. Let's do things authentically.
Yes, and especially if that resonates with you, and you personally feel like, okay, I think it's time to just challenge myself. Small things can really get you there, and it can really enhance your abilities to socialize with other people in settings. Even for interviews, we're always put in a place in life where we kind of have to force ourselves to stand out, and having the experience as little as possible, like just trying to make your way to improve, can really help a lot and make the difference.
One of the things I did with a coaching client of mine recently was, she was so frustrated at continually being asked or told, you're so quiet, why are you so quiet? And what she started saying recently is, and it's something that I developed and kind of with her, is thank you for noticing that. It's actually one of my real strengths, because I listen and I'm then able to assimilate the ideas and summarize for people. So thank you for noticing that I'm quiet. So rather than taking it as an offense or as an insult, or then getting defensive about it, just step into it and own it, and own it with some pride. Why not?
Yes, I love that. I love that, because rather than saying like, sorry, you know, I'm a bit shy, like, that's sometimes natural for us to just keep diminishing ourselves. But if you just, like you said, own up to it and just say, you know, yes, thank you, like, I'm just a great listener, that just gives you all the power that you needed. And
Absolutely.
yeah. and then other people will start to see it differently. Like they won't necessarily see it as a negative. Instead, they'll see it as a positive, like, oh wow, am I a good listener? Like, it'll just get them questioning their own abilities.
Absolutely. Yes, perfect.
Yes, because I can't tell you enough how many times, like, I've always been shy and I've, been the quiet one. And I'm just like, I don't know. I don't know how to, like, challenge myself to open up, especially
Hmm.
when we're always in fear of being judged by others and saying the wrong thing. And that all goes with like the think, say, think, which,
Absolutely.
sometimes you just don't say anything at all.
Hmm.
So, Joanna, where can everyone find you?
So if you, my website is, and it's being redone at the moment, it'll be even more gorgeous soon, but it's
Oh,
www.flourishingintroverts.com. And if you go to flourishingintroverts.com, you'll find my podcast. You'll find the news flash about the course that's starting soon. You'll find my blog, which I call my musings. You'll find everything you need and you'll find the link to my TEDx talk. So everything you need is right there.
wow. That is so exciting. And I really appreciate you being on here. I feel like I've learned so much from you, and it's amazing that you are able to be the voice for all the introverts out there and to be able to help people realize that, you can be introverted and social, like
Abs-
you're basically like, eliminating all those myths that there are out there, unfortunately, all those misconceptions that are believed
yeah,
upon someone being an introvert. So I do appreciate you for doing that.
you're very welcome. It feels like it's my heart song work and I'm proud to do it.
Oh, well, I thank you again.
Thank you.
I really hope this podcast made you smile at least once. Stay tuned for more advice and positivity next Friday. As always, it's Mayra. I hope all of you guys have such a beautiful day. And I really hope that you learned so much from this episode, which I'm sure you did. Just to see exactly what kind of introvert you are, I will be including the quiz, Joanna's quiz that she mentions. Very, very shortly on my bio. So please make sure to check it out, because I'm telling you, it will give you so much information as to how you can start to understand yourself. And once you do, you'll start feeling so much better and a lot more confident. Bye.